Hey everyone, my name is Danielle Roberts. Some of you may have known me in connection to what has now become known as the NXIVM sex cult, or as the branding doctor for a secret sorority known as DOS. I wanted to speak to everybody a little bit more directly today and break down exactly what happened. There's a tremendous amount of misinformation in the media, in our legal system, and I think it's about time that we set the record straight. So what I wanted to do was break down for all of you exactly what happened, exactly what the process was in the media, exactly what the process was in the hearing in the administrative court, and get some more information out about how our society is working at this point in time. So what we're going to look at is medical misconduct or trial by media. So was the decision that was made by the Office of Professional Medical Conduct, the OPMC, actually a valid decision, or was this decision highly influenced by our media and political pressure? So let's jump in. So what I'm going to look at is what happened, why is it bad, how did it happen, who does it affect and how, and what can we do? So first, what happened? What happened, my license was revoked for something that was not the practice of medicine. And I will get into exactly what the definition, the medical legal definition of the practice of medicine is, and the parameters for the Office of Professional Medical Conduct's jurisdiction in making this decision. So what actually happened? I, as a private citizen of the United States, became a doctor, a professional in the society that we live in. For those of you that don't know me, I have an undergraduate degree in psychobiology. I personal trained and taught aerobics through my undergrad career and through medical school. I got a dual degree in medical school, which was for osteopathic medicine. And that's my dog's chain, osteopathic medicine, and my master's in clinical nutrition. My parents are not doctors. They don't come from a highly affluent background. My father never graduated high school. My mother did bartend and waitress for years until later in their lives, they did form a corporation for real estate, doing construction, flipping houses, etc. So they were very hardworking people and gave me the means to go to school, the first person in my family to actually go to school beyond high school. And I paid most of my way through undergrad and medical school. So after earning a dual degree in osteopathic medicine and clinical nutrition, I went on to practice in my own private practice as a medical director of an integrative medical center, as a physician in Manhattan in one of the larger integrative medical practices. Went on to be an entrepreneur and create a company that was in 3 countries in about 18 months and had incredible results, helping people to get well without medications, without invasive procedures or surgeries. Hi, bud. Come on up. He's got to be right behind me. And not once in my 10 years practicing medicine have I ever had a medical malpractice complaint filed against me, ever, in my actual medical practice. I've had compliments, I've had positive reviews, I've had wonderful testimonials from my clients and my patients, and I believe I've done a tremendous amount of good for many, many people. Now, in my private life, separate from my professional life, I decided that I wanted to join a secret society for women who wanted to grow and become very influential entrepreneurs in the world, or, for their own reasons, become a better version of themselves. And this was a very serious organization, a lifetime commitment. something that I felt was very prestigious and very meaningful to me. So when I was invited, I decided to join the organization as a consenting adult, just like all the other women who join the organization consensually, who have decided to speak out in other ways, which, by the way, there's only about 3 women who were actually in DOS that spoke out negatively against it. And there's been at least 8 on the Dossier project that support it, but the narrative continues to persist. So if you want more information about that, you can go to the dossierproject.com. You can go to my website, drdanielleroberts.com, but we're going to keep it strictly medical legal in this talk. So I joined the organization, again, as a consenting adult. About a year into the process of being in the organization, I was asked to help with the branding ceremony that was part of initiation. And that was something that was shared with every woman when they joined. They knew that getting a brand was going to be part of the process of being in this sorority. It was exciting. Most people were, thought it was like a cool thing that was going to be done as part of committing to something like this. You knew that the women who were committing to this were committed, or lifers, were serious about their growth, were serious about their commitment to each other. So I thought, and I was asked to help with that process. There were other women who were not physicians that were also asked to help with that process, and for different reasons, various reasons, whether it was squeamishness or different things, those women decided not to move forward as the first person to help with the process. So after a certain amount of deliberation, I did decide to help with the process. I thought it would be very meaningful to the women that joined. I thought it would help women to be able to grow and understand what it was to make a lifetime commitment. And I decided to do so. Before I decided to do so, what most people don't know is that one of my conditions was that I would need to experience getting the brand myself. So before I committed to helping with the process at all, I went through and experienced what it was like to get a brand myself. And I went to a tattoo parlor in Brooklyn and had a tattoo artist and branding artist go ahead and do that process for me. So I knew exactly how it was done. I knew exactly how it felt. I knew exactly what the process would be like. So that being said, that is where I learned how to do branding, from that specialist, and also from another nationally known branding specialist who actually invented electrocautery as part of branding. It was never part of my medical education. It was never part of any type of medical training in any way whatsoever. No doctor is trained in how to do branding at all whatsoever. Electrocautery, when taught, is taught as part of a surgical procedure, or in dermatology as something to help stop bleeding, or as something to help decrease scarring. This is a completely different process that is intentionally used to be able to create a scar. And therefore the processes are very, very different. So anyway, back to what happened. So I, as a consenting adult, decided to join an organization separate from my career, separate from the practice of medicine. I was asked to help with the branding process. Other women who were not physicians were asked to help with the branding process. I decided, as a consenting adult, to help with the branding process because it was meaningful to me. In that process, I learned how to do the branding process from experts in that field. I then went on to help the women with the process. None of the women who I helped with their brands knew that a doctor was going to be doing the process at all. They didn't know who the person would be, who would be doing the process. All of those women had consented before they became part of the organization. I'm going to do a separate video on consent, and I'm going to address all of the specifics about that because I think that is a huge sticking point. And if people really understand what happened in the process of being invited into DOS and having to earn your way into DOS, it becomes very clear that these were adult women who were not deceived, who clearly made a decision to join a secret sorority of their own fruition. So separate video, again, medical legal here. So at that point, after helping 18 women with their brands, one of the sisters in the organization decided to break her promise to the rest of us women and go public with the organization after she had promised to keep it a secret so that we would be protected. And in doing so, at the time, she was facing charges of fraud. She was facing some issues in her personal life and was willing to throw her friends under the bus, namely in this situation, me, to divert the attention from herself. So in that process, she went to the Office of Professional Medical Conduct and filed a complaint against me for the branding process. Again, she was never my patient. There was no patient-physician relationship. She brought that complaint to the Office of Professional Medical Conduct, and they issued a formal written response. And in that written response, it says very, very clearly, the issues you described did not occur within the doctor-patient relationship, and should be reported to law enforcement in the area where the incident occurred. The issues you describe are not medical misconduct as defined by the New York Education Law, section 6530. The information that you have supplied will be retained in our confidential files and no further action will be taken. And when this was brought to law enforcement also said this was consensual between consenting adults and absolutely no charges were pressed against me ever, criminally. So clearly the Office of Professional Medical Conduct saw very clearly that this was not the practice of medicine. There was no patient-physician relationship and decided not to pursue this matter any further. Now, after they issued that formal response to Ms. Edmondson, she continued to escalate the issue, went to the media, and decided to create a salacious story and dramatize the branding process quite a bit. I have the actual video of the branding process in which she does not scream, she does not cry, she does not wail, where on many of the media specials that she appeared on, she clearly states that she was screaming in pain, wailing, all sorts of things that are not true at all whatsoever, that it was worse than childbirth. So again, branding happens all over the country. On my page, I will put a separate clip that addresses branding, and you guys can see that this happens in tattoo parlors all over the world. This happens in fraternities. This happens all over. You know, it's not extremely popular or publicized, but there are many people right now getting brands done with their loved one's initials or some other meaningful symbol to them, and they're consenting adults who are more than capable of making that decision. So again, separate video, I'll do branding. But in the meantime, she goes to the media, she creates this salacious story, the media loves it, it creates a ton of attention. Frank Parlato jumps on board, creates a blog, creates all sorts of salacious pictures, all sorts of smutty, exciting kinds of stories, and it takes off. The next thing that happens is the New York Times files goes ahead and publishes an article. And in that article, they essentially call out one of our elected officials, Governor Cuomo, and essentially say that Ms. Edmondson had filed a complaint that is not being followed up on. You know, essentially, Governor Cuomo, why are you not protecting the public welfare? So here it says, former members have asked the state authorities to investigate the group's practices, but officials have declined to pursue action. So as the New York Times calls out the governor and the elected officials, 2 days later, there is another article printed in the New York Times that states, of course, officials of New York State plan to review why regulators did not act after women involved in a secret group reported that they had been branded with a cauterizing device or traumatized in an experiment. said a spokesperson for Governor Cuomo. So very clearly here, right after this article was published, I got a phone call from my lawyer, and indeed, the Office of Professional Medical Conduct decided that they were going to investigate my medical license, after they issued a formal written statement to say that this was not the practice of medicine and had nothing to do with the patient-physician relationship. So it seems to me, and you can form your own conclusion, that in order to save face in the media and protect his ability to be reelected or his popularity, Governor Cuomo made a decision to make an example out of one of our citizens, namely me in this case. Now, I am not the only person that this has ever happened to, nor will I be the last person unless we do something. So I called Governor Cuomo. I went to the Capitol building. I wrote letters. I sent them to the office. I let him know that this was a complete misunderstanding, that the women who were complaining about this were not my patients, that this was consensual, that a lot of the stories that were being circulated in the media were not true. And I got no response from Governor Cuomo at all. In fact, the people who did receive my letter, not sure if they ever actually gave it to him, but they did send it to the prosecutors who were pressing charges against me in the Office of Professional Medical Conduct. So thank you for that. That was very nice. So not only are our citizens' rights to due process not being protected, the media is greatly influencing the investigative process and the judicial process. But when our officials are trying to be reached by citizens who are being targeted by the media, there's no response, and they continue to support the process of having the prosecution or their administrative courts make an example of that citizen, quite realistically, wrongfully. So next, I already made this point. So why would the Office of Professional Medical Conduct suddenly be motivated to investigate my medical license for something that was already deemed non-medical? So perhaps we should ask Governor Cuomo. I would love to know what his answer is. Okay, so now I'm going to break it down. Now, the Office of Professional Medical Conduct decides to investigate my medical license. Do they have jurisdiction to even investigate my medical license in this case, knowing that it has nothing to do with the practice of medicine, and knowing as soon as they choose to make the decision to investigate my medical license, I can no longer get a job in any of the hospitals in the entire country. So they aid in destroying my reputation based on salacious claims in the media, and they make it virtually impossible for me to get a job or even get malpractice to open up my own practice. Now, they're supposed to investigate quickly and efficiently so that if these allegations are false, I can go back to practicing medicine and being able to support myself and my patients. They filed charges and they waited over the time limit for which they had to be able to pursue those charges. In fact, they waited almost 4 years before they then brought those allegations up again and then proceeded to pursue the hearing. So now my medical license or my ability to practice medicine has been impeded for about 4 years, and maybe a little bit less, a little over 3 years. And then they decide to move forward with the hearing process. So now the legal parameters for revoking a physician's license in New York, there are two major points that I think we need to understand. One is, if they do have the jurisdiction after they've already decided it's not the practice of medicine, if they do want to investigate, God forbid, something really crazy was going on and they needed to check in to see if I was practicing medicine in some very negligent way, there are two things that you would need to be able to substantiate in that investigation. One is they need to be proven incompetent or immoral within the practice of medicine. So I would need to be incompetent or have done something immoral within the practice of medicine. So if something is done immoral outside of the practice of medicine, then that's not substantive, that's not substantial for being able to revoke or give any type of punitive action for that physician or that state professional, state licensed professional. So that being the case, just an example to drive it home. So if a physician, this is a crude example, I warn you, but this will drive the point home. If a physician is in his medical practice, and it could be a him or a her, but typically I think in this example, it would be a he. If he was in his medical practice and had a patient on a medical table, was doing a medical exam and decided to rape a patient as part of his medical practice, that is clearly an immoral act within the practice of medicine. Now, that is clearly within the jurisdiction of the Office of Professional Medical Conduct and is an egregious abuse of his power as a physician, 100%. Now, if that rape happened outside of the practice of medicine, in someone else's home, in the bushes in a park, whatever it was, that immoral act was not done within the practice of medicine. However, if he is charged criminally for the act and he is convicted of that act, then 100%, the Office of Professional Medical Conduct has the jurisdiction to revoke that physician's license for criminally convicted behavior. Okay, so it needs to either be within the practice of medicine or convicted, proven and convicted of immoral behavior outside of the practice of medicine, neither of which are true for me. There were absolutely no criminal charges that were brought against me. Certainly, I was not convicted of any criminal charges. And in fact, there was no crime that was committed at all whatsoever. Was there any immorality that happens within the practice of medicine? Absolutely not. This wasn't the practice of medicine. These weren't my patients. And there absolutely was nothing immoral done or negligent done within the practice of medicine. Nor was there anything immoral done within my private life as part of this secret sorority. But again, that's a separate video, a separate matter. This is a medical legal issue. If I did something immoral within my private life, that is an issue with me, my conscience, and God, whatever you believe in, and whomever I may have hurt or trespassed against in some way. So that is for me as an adult to address within myself and with the person that it involves. That is adulting. That is what we're responsible for. Not having our administrative and criminal courts be policing us for immoral behavior. Again, there was nothing immoral done in this case, and if there was, that's for me to deal with. So I think that's clear. Now, moving on to the next slide. So I already covered this. So what did I do? I helped 18 adult women who also consented and earned their way into the organization, received their brands. I'm not going to go into how, any of that process. Know that it was a beautiful process. It was very consensual. The women were laughing, they were joking. Again, like I said, I have a video of this. Sarah Edmondson herself was laughing and joking, making jokes about how she just had a Hallmark audition the day before and now she's getting a badass brand. Again, laughing, joking, breathing her way through the whole process. At the end, joyfully and gratefully having tears of gratitude for being invited to such a meaningful organization, and clearly had an understanding and connection to what it was that was so important for us to build in this organization. So I will leave it there and keep the rest in a separate video. But now with what I did, so what did I do medically? So like I said, so I learned how to do the process from a branding artist and a tattoo artist. There are no medical courses for branding. There are no doctors at all who taught me in any way to do anything of the sort. What I did do was learn from the tattoo artists and the branding artists how to do this. It was highly researched as to which tool we would use in this process. I had never done anything like this before. A lot of the fraternities use a hot branding iron, but when researched, the branding iron damages much, much more skin and takes much, much more time to heal, has much higher incidence of infection, all of these types of things. And I wasn't the one researching this. I, of course, did my own due diligence separately, but the women who created DOS and who were creating the initiation ceremony and who decided that they wanted to have the women get a brand, all of those things were created by the first line of women who were creating this organization. And when they did, they were very meticulous about what the process was that they wanted to have the women go through. So they picked something different than men would choose. They didn't choose a hot branding iron like the Omegas use. They chose a tool that can be very highly controlled, that would create specific lines so that those lines could be clean and aesthetically look good. Of course, there's no control, and every woman knew this, there's no control over the healing process of a brand. Scarification artists and branding artists will certainly tell you that. Everybody's skin heals differently. So they can keloid, which is like a raised scar that can change color, or they can completely disappear or become white and hardly be seen. So there's little control over that aspect of the art, but the tool itself is highly controllable. It's in some ways the least amount of pain. Once the initial contact to the skin is over, the pain stops. And essentially those cells are destroyed, but there's no damage to the surrounding cells, to the deeper levels of cells or to the cells on the side of the initial lines. So there's much less risk of infection, there's much less pain in the healing process, and the healing process goes much, much more quickly. And these are the exact reasons that the women chose this particular machine, and it's the machine that is predominantly used by all of the tattoo artists and branding artists alike throughout the country. I believe it was first created in I'm going to get the year wrong, so we'll skip it, but I'll put it in the notes. But it was created quite a long time ago, and this is the predominant method used to do the branding. So I learned how to do it in that way. That's the reason the tool was chosen. That tool is not just used by doctors. That tool is used by branding artists and tattoo artists all over the country. So it can be purchased by a layperson. It does not need to be purchased by a medical professional. Again, none of the women that came to the initiation ceremonies knew who would be doing the branding. So they weren't coming because there was a patient-physician relationship. They had no idea it was going to be a doctor. They would have done it whether it was a doctor or a tattoo artist or a layperson. That did not influence their decision whatsoever. There was no insurance that was billed. There was no payment collected. There was, in fact, there are no insurance codes that even exist for branding. So again, no patient-physician relationship, no medical procedure done, absolutely not the practice of medicine in any way, shape, or form. Again, actions taken within my private life. So that is what I chose to do. That is what actually happened. And again, is this the practice of medicine? So same machine used by tattoo artists daily, taught by the country's leading branding expert. I was taught by him. There are no medical courses that teach branding. The women were not my patients. There was no patient-physician relationship. No money is exchanged, no insurance is billed, and no insurance codes that exist for branding at all whatsoever. So not only that, but as you guys already know, the OPMC had looked into this themselves and already issued a written formal response that this was not the practice of medicine and was not a patient-physician relationship. So all that being said, just to drive the point home, I also want to share with you guys, what is the medical legal definition of the practice of medicine? And that is, the practice of the profession of medicine is defined as diagnosing, treating, operating, or prescribing for any human disease, pain, injury, deformity, or physical condition. And this is section 6251 of the New York Education Law, entitled The Definition of the Practice of Medicine. Now, if you guys can tell me what I was diagnosing, what I was treating, what I was operating on, or what I was prescribing for, I would really love to know. So clearly, none of these women came to the initiation ceremony with any disease, with any pain, with any injury, or with any deformity or condition that was being treated in any way whatsoever. So how could medicine be practiced when there was nothing to practice on? There was nothing to heal. There was nothing to operate on. This was a purely private, aesthetic, artistic practice done between consenting adults in their private lives that had nothing to do with the practice of medicine. And this is an egregious overreach and abuse of power of our administrative courts that was motivated by a politician who wanted to save face in the media, and by women who wanted to gain materially by going public in ways that, in my opinion, are very egregious and throwing their friends under the bus at the same time. So how did the OPMC make it okay to revoke my medical license when clearly this had nothing to do with the practice of medicine? Well, I just shared a whole lot of that with you, and I'll continue to allow you guys to make your own assessments here, but I will answer that question with the question, and that is, with everything that you guys have seen in the media, most of you don't know me, and coming to know me through these false narratives, through these caricatures that are made in the media to try to introduce me to you. If that is the way you've come to know me, if that is the way I was introduced to you, then clearly you know very little about who I am and what I stand for and anything that I've done in my life at all whatsoever. So that being said, and considering what the world has come to know about NXIVM, about DOS, about the women in DOS, and about the stories that have been told about DOS, with all of that and the federal case, which again is a completely separate thing, there's a tremendous amount of evidence that the FBI, again, was also influenced, just like in my case, that the FBI was influenced highly by the media and by several other factors, which I will not get into, and committed crimes to be able to convict the people that they did convict in relation to this story. So that information will be coming out shortly. There'll be a lot of information separate to that. You can also go to makejusticeblind.com to get more information, thedossierproject.com. NXIVM.com, I believe, is also up, and you can get some more information there. So all a separate thing. But with all of this story, all of this momentum, all of this hype that's going on in the media, and the human drive to save face or protect themselves materially, if the OPMC had allowed me to keep my medical license, what do you think would have happened? What do you think would have happened in the media? What do you think would have happened in our culture? What do you think would have happened to the FBI agents who were involved in criminal activity in a separate FBI case? What do you think would have happened if these administrative court officers did not revoke my medical license? And I also want to bring out the point that these 2 doctors and 1 lay person that were part of the committee that was making the decision whether or not I should be allowed to continue to practice medicine or not, these individuals are hired and fired by the same board that that the governor resides over, that the medical commissioner resides over. So if the governor makes a phone call and he wants to have somebody's license revoked, if these individuals were to vote to have me keep my medical license, they may also be out of a job or out of a committee position. The judge who, in an administrative court, the judge doesn't make the decision. That's only in criminal court. So the ALJ, or the administrative law judge in the administrative court that oversees professional state licenses, they act more as a referee. They decide what evidence can go into the case and what evidence will be withheld in the case. So the administrative law judge in this case, it was very interesting. It was a very interesting process. She's also hired and fired by the medical commissioner, who's influenced by the governor, who, very interestingly, and as a side note, I won't get into it, after my case had hit the airwaves, sound waves all over the place, Governor Cuomo issued an executive bill into law after my case hit the news, that would allow the governor to hire and fire the medical commissioner. So when he was not able to do so initially in my case, certainly he made it that he would be able to do so after. He also made it in that bill possible to be able to publish publicly allegations against physicians without them being convicted in a hearing. So not only can trial by media exist, but you can publicly make statements and give information to the media to destroy that physician's reputation, to destroy their entire career before those allegations are ever proven true or untrue in a court of law. This is happening in the United States of America, in a country that touts innocence until proven guilty. So, just saying, those laws were signed into effect after my case. Interesting, to say the least. So now we have the governor who's influencing the medical commissioner, and the medical commissioner who's influencing the board to make a decision, and influencing the administrative law judge to be able to make decisions in this case. And again, if they don't decide in the way that these higher officials would like them to, who knows what happens after that? They have a job or they don't. I can tell you that the administrative law judge decided not to allow into evidence the letter that I just showed all of you that said the Office of Professional Medical Conduct had already decided that this was not the practice of medicine. So that was excluded from the evidence that was used to revoke my medical license. I can tell you that the prosecutors used a tremendous amount of prejudicial information in the hearing. The pictures of the brands that they used to give to the board members who were making this decision were 10 times the size of the brand. They were on a piece of paper that was red, had a red background, and made these brands look like huge and ugly and all sorts of painful. So that's just one example of the prejudicial information that they tried to bring in, but there is a tremendous amount of prejudicial information that they tried to bring in, tremendous amount of discrimination that was used. And this isn't something I can prove, but I think it's important to state it out loud. My attorney has been doing this for 40 years and is primarily a specialist in medical malpractice cases. And there was one point, so my hearing was extremely long. Most of them are 3 or 4 hearing dates long. Mine was 13, I think, 12 to 14 hearing dates long in total. And the administrative law judge, in all honesty, besides keeping out that letter from evidence, was making fairly good, I believe, fairly unbiased decisions, fair decisions for most of the hearing. But we got to I don't know, about hearing number 9. And on that day, me and my lawyer both kind of looked at each other and the judge's behavior, characteristics, intonation, and her decisions changed drastically. At this point in the hearing, she had denied me the ability to have an expert witness in infectious disease come and speak. The prosecution side was allowed to have an expert witness in infectious disease, and she had denied us the ability to do so, stating essentially that the board had enough information. So seemed very interesting, some of the calls that she started making around that time. It seemed very obvious to both me and my lawyer that she may have received a phone call from somewhere in that process. Anyway, needless to say, I think it's important that most people understand what I've experienced, what the process was, and really understand, did the OPMC have jurisdiction to make the decision they made, or was this trial by media? Was this political pressure? And was this a complete abdication of the rights of a citizen, a professional who has contributed to our society for over 10 years in their field of expertise? So why is this bad? I don't think I even need to explain too much more about this, but just in case, understand that if this can happen to me as a professional citizen in this country, this can happen to every single one of us, any one of us. Now, this also, because this is an administrative court that oversees the state licensing of professionals, that means any state licensed professional can be subject to this same process, this same prejudicial, discriminatory, essentially gossip-driven process. So now understand what we have now, what we're supposed to have is an objective media, journalism that looks at facts and unbiased reporting. We've completely lost that. It is now run by essentially, one or two people that have full domain over our media outlets. The money behind all of the media outlets kind of comes from one particular person for the most part, who then runs big pharma and runs lots of the profits that are going through the hands of many powerful people these days. So with that being said, we have a highly controlled media system that has no checks and balances, no accountability, no fact checking, no objectivity, and is essentially driven by profit and salacious ratings. So that process is now running and influencing our justice system. Understand that when this process first started happening with me, I thought, okay, I know the media is corrupt. I know they're about ratings. I'm not going to speak to the media. My lawyers, they advised me not to speak to the media. Okay, I will wait for the justice system to do its job. I will wait for the proper objective process to happen and for justice to be served. And what I found was not that. Our media, our gossip column, what has become the National Enquirer, is now highly influencing our justice system. Why is that bad? What rights do citizens have if we're making legal decisions and decisions that govern our own freedom and liberty based on gossip, prejudice, and discrimination? I mean, now we essentially have fifth graders with biases, with likes and dislikes, with prejudices, making decisions based on clickbait rather than an objective legal process that has been fought for hundreds of years so that we could have an objective, democratic process, due process that protects our citizens, both of their rights and being wrongfully charged, and from having criminals on the street. But our freedom is only as good as our morality. It is only as good as our ability to be able to make distinctions, be objective, keep our emotionality and our own prejudices out of our objective decisions, whether that's in medicine and in science, or whether that's in our objective legal processes. And that is not what we have right now. Like I said, right now we have fifth graders making decisions based on prejudices, biases, and all sorts of likes and dislikes, and whether a person is guilty or not guilty, or whether an administrative court even has the jurisdiction to look into something like this. We have a process that convicts people based on biases and prejudices. That is not the United States. That is not democracy. That is not justice. And that is very dangerous for every single one of us. So who does it affect? Myself, every doctor in this country, every state-appointed professional, real estate agents, CPAs, insurance brokers, any one of you that have had a state-appointed license given to you, an administrative court, attorneys, an administrative court can peer into your private life if the decision they made against me stands. If that precedent is set, they can now peer into your private life, and based on your private life, not your career, not your profession, not anything that you've done in the workplace, if they don't like your religion, if they don't like the way you raise your children, if they don't like whether you've been vaccinated or unvaccinated, they can choose to take your license, your livelihood, and your career, or at least the state-appointed license that gives you the ability to be able to practice that in this country. So what can we do? I have filed an Article 78, which is a legal document or a legal appeal to the New York State Court of Appeals. This process would call out the Office of Professional Medical Conduct, but would examine whether or not the Office of Professional Medical Conduct had the right and the jurisdiction to make the decision that they made. Essentially, we're looking at whether or not branding was the practice of medicine. Now, we have the ability to put this judge on notice. We have the ability to put all eyes on the judge, on this process. If we do, and this judge is watched, we can reverse this precedent, and we can take back our ability as people to hold our government officials accountable so that officials like Governor Cuomo can't influence our justice system for a political agenda. We can hold our media accountable so that people have an objective legal process that they go through, and it's not trial by media, trial by prejudice, trial by fifth grade clickbait, that this is an actual legal process. But we have to get our eyes on the judge. We have to get people who want to support this Article 78 speaking out. We have to get media outlets willing to write about it. We have to get people tweeting, talking, all sorts of things so that people are educated, so that they understand what is going on. And we can reverse this precedent, and we can make sure that not only is the public protected from immoral behavior and criminal behavior, but our citizens, our state licensed professionals, are also protected, and that our rights to due process are also protected, so that the cancel culture that we live in, the destructive culture that we live in, cannot destroy real value that has built by professionals, that has been built by professionals. This happens all over. I'm sure some of you are shaking your heads that have had your careers ruined by a faulty sexual harassment accusation. You know, a woman decided that she was going to get back at an ex-boyfriend or somebody who decided not to marry her after they were having an affair, and all of a sudden their entire career, their livelihood, their family was destroyed. So we need protection in both ways. We need to make sure that the public is protected from harmful criminal behavior, immoral behavior, but we need to make sure that our rights as citizens are protected from faulty accusations, from this litigious society where patients feel that they can just sue any doctor for any particular ailment, or where the people who don't want to take responsibility for their own actions can just create a scenario, create a story, and destroy someone's reputation, their livelihood, and everything else. So the Article 78 is a place to start. I'm also forming a coalition for people that this has happened to. So if you have been a victim, I hate that word victim, but if in the physical world you have become a victim of trial by media, political agenda, some sort of false narrative that has been started, take responsibility and call me or write or click. Again, just because we were a victim of a certain process doesn't mean mentally we had to choose to be a victim. We can set this process right. So please contact me. My information is all over. Email me. Use this platform to DM me or private message me. Get in contact with me somehow if this has happened to you. We'll get this whole coalition moving. I want to see this Article 78 be successful. I also need funding to be able to run the Article 78. So there is a fundraiser on Give, Send, Go that is also up and running and collecting funds so that I can pay my lawyer the additional $30,000 to $40,000 that this is going to take to be able to finish the appeal. I think some of you know that I've been fighting this for a very, very long time. I've sold my home. I've sold all of my assets. I don't have anything left to be able to continue to pay my lawyer, but I know that together we can make this possible. So if this matters to you, if this is as egregious to you as it is to me, please go to the fundraising page. Please donate and support my efforts. Please contact me. Let's build a strong foundation so that we can turn this around and we can continue to have an actual justice system, not influenced by the media. And we can start to hold the media accountable for these types of damaging false narratives. So thank you all so much for listening to the end of this presentation, for taking it to heart. And I hope to see all of you, maybe even at a celebratory gala where I have turned around this we have turned around this faulty precedent and are celebrating the reinstatement of my medical license, the accountability and integrity of our justice system, and the accountability of our current media. So thank you all, and I look forward to hearing from you.